Okay, great. Okay, so I'm very much a words person, so very little visual aid. But thinking about doing this presentation, at some point I was like, okay, let me have 5 blank slides because I don't necessarily have a story of transformation in its biggest sense, in its widest sense, in its beautiful sense. And then I thought, that's a cop-out and not radical. So I decided to tell a narrative looking at particular moments, because I'm also a bit critical of the idea that transformation can only exist within a long period of time, or what we recognize as a long period of time, and that there can be moments, even if it's 5 seconds long, which we can look to for transformation. I'm very much a Pan-Africanist, as many of you know, so I thought of this quote, about 2 of them. Look, Mama, a Negro comes from France, gives us Frantz Fanon, right? 1952, Frantz Fanon is in Algeria, and the kid says that. Mama, I'm scared, look, a Negro. And then Frantz Fanon starts to write Black Skins, White Masks, which inspires a lot of the liberation movements. The second quote, which is go back to your loction, I'll talk to you in the last slide, remember it. And then for me, these moments are interesting and weird and need some reflection, because in 1994 in my country, there's a lot of celebration. You look at that image, there's Nelson Mandela and the wretched rapist behind him, Jacob Zuma. And everybody's celebrating, and we have democracy and freedom. But also, on the other side of the continent, my people are massacring each other in Rwanda. And it's an odd moment of what could have happened in South Africa in terms of the liberation project. Was there not space for us to say, wait a bit, what does none of us are free until we are all free mean? Is this a transformation agenda if it's part of the continent? And what are the remnants of these borders, and how then they continue to replicate themselves? Then there's more moments that are in these images. So right there is Chris Hani, who was gunned down in 1993. His death meant the tapering down of a lot of the resistance in South Africa. So a lot of people in South Africa at that moment wanted to go into full-out civil war, and Nelson Mandela stood up and said, no, 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 my people, let's reconcile. What are the consequences of that? Track back a number of years later, Sizakele Skasa and Salome Musa are murdered in 2007. We believe quite strongly that it is a result of their sexual orientation. And then we start what we call the 777 campaign. 777 campaign, so they were murdered on the 7th of July in 2007. 777 campaign is an act to end hate campaign and lasts only for about 2 years. But some of the thinking that informed the 777 campaign continues, and some of it is problematic, but we do talk a lot now about murder as a result of sexual orientation. The other woman who was still on the slide, there was Pinky Musiane and there was Andres Tatane. Andres Tatane was gunned down at a service delivery protest in South Africa on camera, but by the police, but they were let free because apparently there was insufficient evidence. And Pinky was killed within 2 weeks of working in a mine shaft. So she was raped and killed by other miners. So some of those deaths and some of those moments kind of question how we respond to which bodies matter. So those names are known, even if they're in various contexts. But why are they known, and who are the others? And how do we respond even to them? Is it enough to say that Andres Tatane was killed because of a service delivery protest? Or can we be saying that the conditions in South Africa for black men in general make it so that our lives are cheap and available to violence? Another interesting moment that goes on in South Africa every June and December is this creation, or the culmination of a creation of a certain type of black masculinity. So our young men go into the mountain, get bits of themselves chopped off, their foreskins, and suddenly they are men. And the way in which those masculinities are spoken about and created isn't really in the public domain, but now only comes to the public domain because a lot of these kids are dying. And one of the interesting things about this conversation is who should be involved, because it's quite a cultural thing and it's for men only. But what a lot of the feminists are saying is that masculinity only exists in relation to femininity. So they come back and be men on us. So we need to know what's going on there. And in fact, their death is a necessary consequence for the kinds of masculinities you are creating. So, and it's a moment that only happens at certain times. And even the women who are allowed to go into those spaces are certain kinds of women. So you'll see that the woman in my picture is like all cultural looking. So she's kind of well-dressed and well-managed, whereas someone like me, for example, who's queer and has dirty hair, has no business talking about this sacred ritual. And this I will also talk about a bit more during the course of the 4 days, but this is a protest that the 1 in 9 campaign did, which I'm part of, where we simulated death in a way. So we tried to look at these transformative powers or transformative methods, the other side of life. And we did this protest at a Women's Day celebration first. So the ANC Women's League did this whole thing about, women are free, look at us. We are having so much fun. And we went and we lay on the ground and we made bodies that had labels on them, stabane, dyke, sex worker, etc. And we said, actually, there is no cause to celebrate Women's Day because we are dying. And you having fun, that's nice for you, but we're dying. So just, yeah, that was my thinking about how then do we transform what seems like natural. So how do we transform unnatural deaths as ways to struggle and as ways to look for a better world, or as ways to look at the world in other ways? Thanks.